I will ask without objection that we make item number 2 and item number 4 consent items. And so those will pass without objection. The first item I'm going to hear is item number 5. But first, there's one item listed under public comment. I suspect this is also for item number 5, but either way, I'll let this person be the first speaker. Ankar Patel. But I don't know if this is public comment or item 5.
Yeah, public comment.
Okay,
Might
so
as well
one public
take my
comment
time now that I'm
before
here, right? I'm doing a master's degree. I'm doing a master's degree at CSUN California State University, Northridge on transportation, right? Transportation is a derived good, right? People go from A to B not because they feel like it, but because they have to, right? It's about getting to work, it's about getting to their families, it's about going to school. It's a necessity, right? And then when we operate apartheid systems or there's different modes of transportation that are preferred by other people for different reasons, it's important to look at the underlying ridership numbers, the data. How much does it cost to actually move somebody from A to B? We don't do that enough. I think it's, so there's a lot of different things. We got this bike plan coming in with B-Cycle, or what it was, Bike Nation, right? $16 million is the program, and they got 4,000 bicycles. That's $4,000 a bicycle. $4,000 a bicycle. And it's the same with Access Paratransit and MV Transit. It's the same with Veolia and all these other private contractors. Transportation is a public necessity. And instead of giving it to private corporations, we should be doing it in-house.
Thank you.
Only 1 minute, is that what you're telling us?
I would appreciate that people not shout from the audience, so I'm not responding to you, but I was going to announce at the beginning of this item that we have so many speakers that we are going to allow 1 minute per person. And we're going to begin with comments from the public on item number 5.
Mr. Chair, can I read in the item first?
Yes.
Item 5 is a CA report relative to DOT contract with Veolia Transportation for the operation of the Dash Transit service in downtown and mid-city areas.
Right, and this is a common practice of the City Council, both in committee and at council, that when we have this many speakers, we allow 1 minute per person. So we're going to begin with Garrick Ruiz, to be followed by Eric Roman and James Lafferty, and you can all come up and have a seat. Feel free.
Thank you, Councilmember Koretz and the rest of the council members present, and thank you everyone for being here. My name is Garrick Ruiz. I live in Council District 1 in Lincoln Heights. I'm a temp worker. I took the day off work today to be here. And I would like to submit to give to you, Councilmember Koretz, over 290 postcards that are signed, all in support of the Dump Veolia campaign, as well as over 175 signatures that we've collected on petitions, all urging the council to please not support this bid by Veolia to run the dashes. I personally have spent over 6 months, thank you. I personally have spent over 6 months in the occupied West Bank. I've witnessed firsthand how Palestinians and Jewish Israelis have 2 completely different sets of transportation. Veolia runs buses on Jewish-only roads. These are roads that connect the state of Israel to illegal settlements in the West Bank. And so because of that apartheid system, we strongly urge the council to stand in the tradition of the Los Angeles City Council in boycotting South African apartheid, in boycotting racist SB 1070.
Please wrap up. You're out of time.
Thank you so much. But please do stand with that record of human rights and do select somebody else for this contract. Thank you.
And by the way, this timer is not working at the moment.
Yeah, we can't actually see that.
Okay, and before the next item, I should ask the city attorney, we've heard testimony in the past, and we're starting to hear today about opposing a contract because they do business with a certain country. Even if we wanted to take matters such as that into consideration, can we, and what's our standard of review for contracting matter as a local city council?
Both federal and state law prevent the city from refusing to do business with Israel. We cannot boycott Israel based on both of those laws because of a company that's submitted an RFP or requested a contract or through the RFP process has submitted a proposal. State law just does not permit us to, based on that reason, to not grant a contract.
Okay, just so people are aware of that. Next speaker is Eric Roman.
Good afternoon, Eric Roman, a Jewish American, son of an Israeli, but here today as a resident of LA in Councilman Garcetti's district and someone who stands for human and civil rights. To be clear, what we're asking today is to reject the contract because of Veolia's practices of discrimination, not because of their relationship with any particular country. Their practices of discrimination. The facts are clear regarding Veolia that we've already presented to this committee regarding their record of discrimination operating bus and train service in the occupied West Bank. The legacy of the city is also clear in weighing in on human rights crises throughout the world, from South Africa to Burma, most recently discrimination against immigrants in Arizona. The city has not held back from taking positions on those human rights crises, nor should it in this case. Of course, the decision of the city to also terminate its relationship with the Boy Scouts of America because of its own discriminatory practices. So we ask you today to reject the contract with Veolia and to join cities around the world who have done the same to make a clear statement that no bus in the city of LA should be operated by Veolia as long as Veolia is transporting Israelis between the West Bank and the occupied territories.
Thank you. Thank you. James Lafferty to be followed by Marcy Newman and Reverend Darrell Myers. Is that you?
Hi. First of all, this is a French company that we're asking this council not to do business with, not with the country of Israel. It has a practice of being discriminatory, not only in Israel, but in many other countries as well, which is why other countries have stopped doing business with it. So let's get that notion of the city attorneys out of the way. That's not relevant here. Secondly, it's really very simple. Think about Rosa Parks. Think about the Montgomery bus boycott. If the company that ran the bus service, built and ran the bus service in Montgomery, Alabama, came to Los Angeles and wanted to run our bus service here, would we have done it? You know damn well we wouldn't have done it. We would have been scandalized had we done it. Well, there's no difference here between this French company, which is running segregated buses, which London and many other countries, England, other countries have said we're not going to do business with, that the United Nations says is guilty of employee discrimination and discrimination with respect to its passengers. It's just like Montgomery, Alabama.
Time.
And if it was wrong to discriminate against people of color in Montgomery, Alabama, it's wrong to discriminate against the Palestinians, and LA should have no business dealings with such a company.
Dr. Marcy Newman to be followed by Reverend Darrell Myers and Carol Francis Lickens.
Can I start?
Please.
Okay. I'm here today as a Los Angelino who currently lives abroad. And I'm here today to speak against Veolia in part because of a tradition that my grandmother taught me, Marion Gibbons, who founded Hollywood Heritage, who is, I hope, well remembered and well loved in this room. I think Tom remembers her well. And she taught me to be an activist. She taught me to stand up for what was right, whether it's saving a barn that started the entertainment industry in the city or fighting human rights. And I have lived in Palestine. I have been a professor at An-Najah University in Nablus, and I've witnessed the discrimination not only in transportation systems, but across the country. And as someone who grew up with someone who saved property and buildings across this city, I know also what it means for Palestinians who are rendered homeless because of the increasing colonization and expansion all over Palestine. So I'm here today to appeal to you. If my grandmother's memory means anything to people in this room, I hope that it will, you'll see that this is also an issue that she supported me and believed in as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Darrell Myers.
Thank you, distinguished gentlemen. I'm Darrell Myers. I grew up in South Central LA, taking the bus and the streetcar. And last year, I returned from my 24th visit to the occupied territories. There, it is very clear that that occupation is a part of 25,000 homes that have been demolished, 83% of the water of Palestinians being taken, orchards by the hundreds of thousands of trees being demolished. I want to encourage you to go see these things for yourself. Most public officials don't see the realities about what's happening in the West Bank. The South African people who opposed apartheid say it's even worse than it was in South Africa. I want to encourage you to go and not be prevented from any public pressure here from seeing the realities on the ground. Please do that. You owe the people of Palestine who want liberty and justice for all, for themselves, as well as for anybody else. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Carol Likens,
Carol Francis Likens.
to be followed by Shakil Saeed and Michael Kaufman, and my apologies for mispronouncing anybody's name.
You got it the second time. I speak as an Los Angeles woman, a retired teacher, a frequent user of public transportation, and an activist who has been twice in Palestine. I have seen firsthand the oppression of the pain that is caused by our government's deification of Israel. And I've seen the pain that it's inflicted, but I have also been there in solidarity as an international witness to the nonviolent resistance of the Palestinians, and which is what we want to support, right? Palestinians have used nonviolent resistance forever, and but it gets ignored and stomped on. And JFK once said that those who make nonviolent revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable. Revolution was his word, and notice he didn't say make it condonable or okay, he said inevitable. We ask you not to support the nonviolent revolution to make it work.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Please.
thanks for inviting me and us. 2 points only. I am an eyewitness to the discrimination that Veolia Transportation exercises against a certain group of people, either for their religion or for their ethnicity. And hence, our city should not do business with. Just as we took moral positions against Arizona, against Boy Scouts, against South Africa, that made us proud and the world applauded us. I believe morality is timeless and universal. It cannot be selective. If we make morality a selective expression of our morality, then it is not morality, but is hypocrisy. City Council has a choice to either be a hypocrite or be a moral symbol of the city of angels. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Michael Kaufman, to be followed by Marissa Nuncio and Esty Chandler.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us all here and listening to us. I'm asking you for a call to conscience. I'm a Jewish American LA resident, a member of Jewish Voice for Peace, as my t-shirt shows, and Jewish Voice for Peace has been working for peace in the Middle East for many, many, many years. The major cause of violence, we believe, in the Middle East is the occupation. Veolia makes profit on this occupation. It takes blood money out of Palestine. I ask LA City Council to stand up for justice, help increase peace, and remove the discriminatory Veolia from doing business in LA. I note in your agenda that there has been no community impact statement submitted. I think that we are all here to point out the negative impact of Veolia for the reputation of Los Angeles and for the cause of peace. Please reject that discriminatory Veolia contract. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And before the next speaker, I want to again mention that as the room gets more crowded, that spillover seating is available in room 2010, just to the left, so at 1020. So if you'd like to listen in more comfort, that is available. Next speaker.
My next. Hello, my name is Marissa Nuncio. I'm a resident of Los Angeles, and I live in District 1. I'm here today to urge the city not to renew contracts with Veolia. Veolia is deeply involved in supporting the occupation and expanding settlement growth, making any just solution impossible, and helping Israel in annexing Palestinian territory. I oppose a contract with Veolia because I oppose colonialism, because I oppose the taking of other people's lands, because I oppose the suppression of self-determination, and I oppose apartheid. LA should not support apartheid, and therefore I urge you not to renew the contract with Veolia. Thank you.
Thank you. Esty Chandler.
Hi, I'm Esty Chandler. I organize the Los Angeles chapter of Jewish Voice for Peace, but today I address you as a proud native Angelino, District 2. One of the things I'm most proud about our city about is our longstanding history against discrimination locally, domestically, and internationally. Los Angeles was one of the first cities in the nation to divest from South Africa during the struggle to end their apartheid system. I remember it well because at that time, I, as a young, struggling actress, had to make the tough decision of whether or not to accept a starring role in a movie I had been cast in, which chose to film in South Africa. Like my city, I did the right thing, and I did not go to South Africa. By contracting with Veolia, a company which directly profits off the Israeli occupation, directly violates the human rights of Palestinians, and directly causes so much humiliation and human suffering, Los Angeles becomes complicit in that suffering. I hope this time that my city will follow my lead and conclude as I have, that Veolia simply does not live up to Los Angeles' stated values. Thank you.
Thank you. Dennis Korthaner, be followed by Nader Barakat and Mohammed Ibrahim. Dennis, you're first.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Dennis Korthoyer. I'm a member of the California Faculty Association, and as such, am a delegate to the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor. I'm asking you, please, not to award the contract to Veolia. Many people have spoken of many reasons for this. I'd like to talk a little bit about the fact that Veolia operates bus lines and also a light rail line that connect parts of Israel with parts of the occupied territory, the settlements in the occupied territory. The settlements are internationally illegal. By doing so, Veolia acts as a tool for connecting the occupied territories more closely to Israel, which goes against the ability to come to a peaceful settlement of the situation between Israel and Palestine. Thank you.
Thank you. Nader Barakat.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. First, I want to thank you for affording the opportunity to speak to you this afternoon. I'm here as an eyewitness to the atrocities of the most sadistic apartheid system in Palestine. I just came from a visit to my family in Palestine 5 weeks ago. I personally witnessed the checkpoints, the walls, the separation, and more importantly, how Israeli soldiers and settlers prevent Palestinians from going to their farms, to their families, on these roads that are exclusively for Israelis only. My humble request to you is to follow the lead of other cities and other cities throughout the world who have done the right thing, and I appeal to your conscience to vote against extending this contract with this company. Thank you.
Thank you. Mahmoud Ibrahim, to be followed by Judith Pardonet, Mac Wells, and Kamran Gashri.
Thank you very much for allowing me to speak here. I am a Palestinian American. I'm a professor of history at Cal Poly Pomona, but I'm a resident of Los Angeles since I moved from New York in 1973. So I consider myself almost a native Los Angelino. I urge the City Council of Los Angeles to join other cities that terminated their contract with Veolia for the same reasons that had been spoken of here. I urge the Los Angeles City Council to join Swansea, Wales, Dublin, Ireland, Galway, Ireland, Sandwell, England, Sligo, Stockholm, and the French cities of Bordeaux and Lille for terminating their contract with Veolia because it practices discriminatory practices and aids and abets as far as the West Bank and occupied territories in the prolongation of an illegal occupation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Judith Cardenet. And then Mark Wells after that.
Actually, Mark would speak more locally to the contract. Would it be possible, given the number of people here, that I could speak for a little longer than 1 minute, maybe 2 minutes? Respectfully, I would request that.
We have to treat everybody the same.
Okay, so he would speak, if you have questions going forward about the contract locally.
Restart the clock since you have questions.
Okay.
Yeah, let's start it again. Give her.
The conflict is a very complex international issue, and we at Veolia are not here to debate that. But the Dump Veolia LA group is part of the boycott, divest, sanction movement, and they have made some false accusations about companies like ours because they have a very strong anti-Israel mission. They have also boycotted against other companies like Hewlett-Packard, Caterpillar, Costco, Motorola, Intel, Sara Lee. Their accusations about violating human rights are not true. Veolia does not discriminate on the basis of any level, whether here in the United States and North America, where we control the decisions, or in Israel, where in fact there are 130 bus lines. 2 of them do go through these territories. The light rail system in Jerusalem, there's many, many films of this. People of all ethnic backgrounds, races, and religion can ride and do ride harmoniously on that system in Jerusalem. No contracts have been canceled or failed to be renewed because of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Wells? Okay. Kamran Gashri?
Yes.
Be followed by Tanya Akel.
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Kamran Qasri. I'm a resident of Los Angeles and want to speak to you as a member of the California Green Party. We Greens, as you all know, have a high regard for environmental and social justice issues. In fact, ecological wisdom and social justice are the first 2 of our international 4 pillars. Listening to other speakers make it obvious to all of us that Veolia participates in Israeli apartheid by providing services to run a restricted bus and light rail line from illegal settlements to Jerusalem. Doesn't it remind us of the apartheid in South Africa and the segregated South? Do we want our city involved in this guilt? From an environmental point of view, Veolia is still involved in the illegal Tavlan garbage dump in the occupied Jordan Valley, which is outside the Green Line. Veolia is also the largest water privatization in the world, and there's been massive campaign against it. Thank you.
Thank you. Tanya Akel?
My name is Tanya Kel. I'm a Palestinian American and a homeowner in the city that I love, which is Los Angeles, and a 15-year labor union organizer. My parents met at an Orthodox Christian church not too far from here on Alvarado and 3rd, in fact. And I'm going to ask you something that you may feel is politically dangerous, but it's the right thing to do. I'm going to ask you to vote no on a contract with Veolia, which has discriminated against people like me. Did you know that despite my master's degree in urban planning from UCLA, I could not get a job at Veolia? Did you know that despite hundreds of years of my family owning property, I still have a home in Ramallah that I can't go there for more than 3 months because I'm Christian? Because of my religion, I cannot work for Veolia and I cannot live in my family's home. Please vote no against a contract with Veolia.
Thank you. And I see you up here. I don't know that I've called your name.
I thought you called my name, and then you went on with other names, so
What-
I don't know.
what-
My
what
name
is your name?
Lily Karam, Karam.
Well, I'll let you testify, and
Okay.
I'll find your name later.
My name is Lily Karam, and I am a proud citizen of this great country, and I'm also a humanitarian. I see the word in different lenses. I see the results of the Israeli occupation and the apartheid regime through the children who are affected by the horrific policies, physically, mentally, emotionally, socially. I'm here to ask you and beg of you not to renew the contract with Veolia, because this is the right thing to do. This is what we stand for. This is what our values are as citizens of this country. The city of Los Angeles has a history of standing against, discrimination. Let us not tarnish our beautiful records. Let's do what the right thing is to do. Let's sleep the night peacefully, knowing that we are standing for the children that are hopeless. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Marcia Steinberg, to be followed by Michael McHugh and George Patton.
Hello, my name is Marcia Steinberg. I'm a retired union representative, a longtime resident of Los Angeles, and a person who comes from a history where we were taught as children, as Jewish children, that because Jews have suffered so much around the world, it is our obligation to stand in solidarity with those who are suffering oppression. So I'm here to say, don't renew the contracts with Veolia, whose actions in support of Israel's efforts to take over all of the Palestinian land has been recognized by most of the world as violations of international law. But yet, when we met personally with staff of the Transportation Committee, I was told, LA doesn't care about that. All we care about is who has the best bid or whatever. And yet, Veolia was responsible for that hideous crash of in Chatsworth, and people were killed. Yet they lost that contract, so why shouldn't they not be allowed to have these new contracts? So I ask you, what is different about LA that makes them not have to respond to the demands for human rights that all the rest of the world stands up for? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Michael McHugh.
My name is Michael McHugh. I'm the county coordinator for the Green Party of Los Angeles, a part of the Green Party of the United States. Over the weekend, we held a general assembly with delegates from districts all over the county to discuss this issue, and we formed consensus. The Green Party of Los Angeles County is a supporter of the Los Angeles Derail Veolia campaign. We urge the members of the City of Los Angeles Transportation Committee, LA City Council members Paul Koretz, Bill Rosendahl, Tom Labange, Bernard Parks, and Jose Huzar to uphold our city's historic tradition of standing up for human rights worldwide and to vote against renewing the Dash Bus Line contracts or any other contract to the Veolia Corporation. Veolia's current operation of segregated buses in the occupied Palestinian territories and its history of discriminatory hiring practices make it unworthy of being awarded contracts by the stakeholders of Los Angeles. Consensus formed by the Green Party Los Angeles County Council on Sunday, September 9th, 2012. Here's a letter I'd like to give you to show that consensus has been formed. Thank you.
Thank you. George Patton, to be followed by Carol Smith and Nicole Pano. Mr. Patton, I presume.
Yes, my name is George Patton. I'm in the district that Eric Garcetti represents. Right off the start, I just wanted to mention that for any of us that don't have the time or the wherewithal to get over to Palestine, there's a wonderful film that was made. It's now available. Jimmy Carter, Man from Plains. Doesn't sound like it's about Palestine, but it was all about the Palestine Peace or Apartheid book tour that took place several years ago. And it shows buses on illegal not legal, well, yes, illegal roads that the Palestinians had no part in creating for themselves. I just wanted to say that I, many years ago, met a wonderful horticulturist who had been a member of the Israeli army at one time, and he had mentioned to me that he had gone to some areas where there were some beautiful olive trees, hundreds or maybe thousands of years old. He described that. I won't tell you that right now, but thank you very much.
Thank you. Carol Smith, presumably Carol Smith, maybe?
Yes, me, Carol Smith. I'm a civil rights attorney, have been one for 50 years, Jewish, resident of the city of Los Angeles, and an active member of the International Committee of the National Lawyers Guild. I will address two grounds for rejection of the LA contract with Veolia. First, safety. In 2008, Veolia, as asserted by the injured and others, including Congressman Gallagher, Veolia's negligence in its operational supervision of the Metrolink train crew was a contributing factor in the Chatsworth head-on train collision, causing the death of 24 innocent passengers and injuries to 35. Relying on depositions and studies, Congressman Gallagher described Veolia's acts as gross negligence. This contract is similar to what was promised Metrolink, promised being safety. Your staff report describes Veolia's safety procedures, but Veolia's history, its implementation and supervision are the tests here, tests which it has failed. Veolia's bid should have been penalized because of its history. Was it penalized? Did your staff examine what happened on Metrolink? Was your staff aware that Veolia no longer is the operational officer for Metrolink?
Carol, I'll have to ask you to wrap up your
Well, I will wrap up, but I would like to say four more things. Four sentences.
Now you just have to...
The second basis is to deny this bid is that Veolia aids and abets Israel's violations of articles of the Fourth Geneva Convention.
I'm sorry, you're way over time. I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up like everybody else.
Well, you can arrest me. In 1955, the United States ratified the Geneva Convention. We are part
Mr. Chair, you're not helping your argument, I can tell you that.
I don't know what will help my argument here, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Nicole Pano?
Hello. Thank you for giving me the time to be here today. It's my first time at City Council, and I'm very happy to be here. I'm here for one reason, and that's because I want peace on earth. I know I sound like a Miss America contestant. I am from Texas and have been Miss Go Texas before. But I'm really here because I really do dream of peace on earth. It's real. It's in my heart. I was born in Paris, France, and I'm proud to say I've been an American citizen for the last over 20 years. Peace can only be achieved if all citizens of this world have equal human rights. This is not against Israel, by the way, and I want to make that note, that this is not against Israel. I'm not against any human being or any country, but this is about ethics, human rights, and peace. Until Veolia allows any human to ride any bus equally, I plead with you to please reject any Veolia contract. Thank you.
Thank you. Amani Barakat, followed by John Parker, Marguerite Buckley, and Clemente Franco.
Good afternoon. My name is Amani Barakat, and I'm speaking to you as a Palestinian American and a human rights activist to urge you to please choose upholding human rights principles over profit. Reject Veolia contract and repudiate its apartheid practices. And please, as you're voting, think of your children, think of your families, as your decision will be affecting children and families in Palestine. Thank you.
Thank you. John Parker?
Yes. My name is John Parker. I'm the former chair of the Central Area Neighborhood Council, still a resident of District 9. I was in Gaza. While I was in Gaza with an international delegation, I saw with my own eyes the effects of terrorism, terrorist Israeli missiles, dropping depleted uranium, the use of dime mines that produce tiny particles that penetrate the organs of children. Over 90% of the people of the nations oppose Israeli apartheid. And if Veolia participates and enables genocide in Israel, then it does not meet the non-discriminatory standards that are also laws that this council is required to obey. And failing that, as Nuremberg showed us, following orders or laws that defy international rights and facilitate war crimes should not and cannot be followed. Thank you.
Marguerite Buckley to be followed by Clemente Franco, Rosa Poor, and Teher Herzog.
Yes, my name is Marguerite Buckley, probably known much better as Marge Buckley, activist attorney, retired after over 55 years, having been the country's first woman bank lawyer, and then area director for neighborhood legal services on the west side, and being ordered fired by President Nixon because we struggled to make our country what it supposedly was supposed to be when we adopted the Constitution many, many long years ago, or our ancestors did. I'm not quite that old. But what I want to tell you is while I've retired from the practice of the law, I have not retired from trying to see that justice is afforded to all people in the whole world, not just in our country. And I believe that you should be listening to those who say this contract with Veolia is a stain on the city of Los Angeles. Thank you.
Thank you. Clemente Franco.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm here both as an individual, someone who was born and raised in South Central Los Angeles and loves this city dearly, and also as a representative of the South Central Neighborhood Council, which passed a resolution last month requesting that this body sever all ties with Veolia and not renew any contracts. I want to address a couple points that the Veolia representative made. First of all, I think she painted everyone with a broad brushstroke, saying that we were anti-Israeli. I like to think that I would be here, but with my Jewish brothers and sisters who were not led on that bus. And I asked you to take a stand as you did with South Africa, as you did rightfully with the issues in Arizona. What would you do if this bus line, or the two bus lines that she claims were running through our city and wouldn't allow our black brothers and sisters on that bus? Or if they wouldn't allow, or if Arizona had these two bus lines that she claims they have, but wouldn't allow Latinos or undocumented people on the bus? I think I know what you would do, and I think I know what your stand would be. I just want to say one last thing. As you ponder this question, I want you to consider the words of a man who tackled this issue many years ago and faced the same situation with a segregated bus system, and that was Dr. Martin Luther King. And he said that the ultimate tragedy is not the oppression and cruelty by the bad people, but the silence by the good people. And I hope you don't remain silent today. Thank you.
Thank you. Reza Poor to be followed by Tahir Herzog, Ankar Patel, and Clemente Franco. We already heard from, right? So, okay. Is that Mr. Poor?
Yes, as a resident of Los Angeles, every day in every corner of this city, I see the discrimination, police brutality, and imagine what Israeli government are doing to Palestinians. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable that, we don't hear that. I could feel it here in this city. 1980, I was attending People's College of Law, and your mayor was attending too. He did not pass the bar. And then he got elected with 10% of the vote in Los Angeles. He was speaking in National Convention of Democratic Party. He was speaking on the behalf of people in Los Angeles, raising the question that Jerusalem should be the capital of Israel. Is it ashamed to have such an individual deciding for our city. It's insult to every individual that this guy is trying to make this brutal system to be installed in Middle East.
I think your time's up. Thank you.
There was somebody else before me.
Tahir Herzog? Okay, not here. Mr. Patel.
So,
But if he comes back in, we'll let him speak. I'll hold his card.
so this is about a transportation contract with a private company. What are the ridership numbers? How many gallons of gasoline are they using? How many people are they actually moving from A to B, right? These details of the contract, the fare box recovery ratio. There's so many specific details that if we got into, Dash is subpar there as well. No one thinks that public transportation in Los Angeles is doing well. I mean, it's typical of how contracts are done in Los Angeles, though. We get sidetracked by so many different issues, and it's the lobbyists and the big corporations that get these very important public services, as opposed to the nitty-gritty details. Are they doing a good job? No, they're not. They're not providing services that are worth $160 million in this contract. They currently have two different contracts worth, I think, a total of $114 million. Does anybody actually feel like public transportation is working here? And that's part of the company, right? Veolia is a poor company in operating apartheid systems in other countries, and they're doing a poor job of running transit here as well. On the facts, we should be looking at other companies to run the system.
Thank you. Kasim Karar, be followed by Mary Singas, Sienna Berger Gluck, and Suleiman Hodali.
I'm Mary Singas. Should I go ahead?
Sure.
Hi, I'm Mary Singas. I live in Mar Vista and I'm in Councilman Rosenthal's district, and the people have written all of you letters, and this is a copy of all of them. We'd like to submit, please. Thank you. When I was in Palestine in November 2009, I saw how Palestinian lives were made almost impossible by the laws that the occupying authorities enforced. Occupying another people's territory is actually illegal under an international law. Veolia participates material in this occupation. Ethical and moral standards need to be applied in awarding contracts. These have not been a part of the vetting process. I urge you to look at these type of questions. Do the workers for Veolia make a salary equivalent to the other bus workers in LA? Or are we asking our LA citizens to barely survive because a French company, Veolia, needs to make profit on their backs? Do we want to invest in a company that does not keep their word in other countries, especially poor countries? Do we really want taxpayers' money going to that company that makes profits from running virtually segregated lines? What you approve here in Los Angeles does make a difference in the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Kasim Karar? Not here. I'll hold that one too in case they're in the other room. Sienna Berger Gluck.
Sienna Berger Gluck, before you start that, I would just like to apologize for having to wear dark glasses, but I have an eye
No
condition.
problem. Welcome.
Okay. My name is Sherna Berger Gluck. I'm not a resident of the city of Los Angeles. I'm, among other things, a former vice president of the California Faculty Association. I'm going to toss my prepared remarks because I want to address some of the points that the Veolia representative made. First of all, probably most of you don't know, although we have told some of you before, that last November, a group of Palestinians boarded a bus outside of Ramallah. When the bus arrived at a checkpoint at a settlement, they were forcibly removed, much like our freedom rides here during the civil rights era. They were arrested by the Israeli authorities. Veolia didn't do it. Yes, that's true. But Veolia is enabling these kinds of illegal discriminatory activities. Veolia is enabling the virtual annexation of the territory that they are illegally occupying by linking Green Line Israel with the illegal settlements. It would be a shame if this city council granted Veolia a contract and broke with its really historic wonderful traditions going back to the boycott of South Africa, Burma, the Boy Scouts, and most recently Arizona. I urge you, even though I'm not a resident of this city, I am a Jewish American human rights activist, and I urge you to do the right thing. Thank you.
Suleiman Hodali, followed by Daniel Gruzman and Dave Rand.
I'm a native Los Angelino and a student at UCLA, and I'm also a Palestinian American. And for me to go back to Palestine, it's not a normal ordeal for any other American citizen. There has to be a long ordeal, about a 12-hour process of being detained, asking where my family's from. But beyond that, looking at where my family's from, once I finally get there through the day-long ordeal dealing with the IDF, there's a huge settlement that's been expanded since 1967. And around my family's hometown are checkpoints that disallow them from going the 2 miles it is to Jerusalem, from Bethlehem. What Veolia does is legitimate these illegal roads that are literally building this entirely illegitimate society literally over Palestinian roads. And I mean, as a native of Los Angeles, I demand that Veolia, their contract is not renewed. Thanks.
Thank you. Daniel Gruzman.
We've all filled out a card for a minute. I think we're probably in order there. We were just going to...
Daniel Gruzman, David Rand, Jesse Gabriel, and Catherine Schneider are my next four.
Good afternoon. My name is Daniel Gritzman. I'm the Chair of Community Engagement for the Jewish Federation of Greater Los Angeles. I'm here today to read our letter that we've submitted into the record, which is signed not only by the Jewish Federation, but by the Simon Wiesenthal Center Museum of Tolerance, the Anti-Defamation League, the American Jewish Committee, the Board of Rabbis of Southern California, Stand With Us, and 30 Years After. On behalf of the Los Angeles Jewish community, we're here today to express our strong opposition to the efforts of the Dump Veolia campaign to connect the award of the Downtown Dash contract to issues related to the Arab-Israeli conflict. As we'll explain, we believe that linking these issues would be unwise, needlessly divisive, and may violate state and federal law. As such, we respectfully request that the City Council adopt a resolution affirming that issues related to the Arab-Israeli conflict will have no bearing on city contracting decisions. As you know, the DVC, which is affiliated with the global anti-Israel boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, is demanding that the City Council refuse to renew Veolia Transportation's contract to operate the Downtown Dash bus service on the grounds that its parent company, Veolia Transdev, does business in Israel and the West Bank. In particular, the DVC is seeking to punish Veolia Transdev for assisting with the construction of a light rail system in Jerusalem and for operating 2 bus lines that pass through the disputed territory in the West Bank. In doing so, the DVC hopes to advance. Go ahead.
As all of you know, I let every single person go a few sentences over. I'm not going to be harder on them because they disagree with you, and I expect you to give them the same courtesy. People that don't, if we have to, we'll remove you.
Yeah, I'll just finish the paragraph, just one more sentence. In so doing, the DVC hopes to advance the larger goals of the BDS movement and the Arab League boycott, which seek to isolate and delegitimize the state of Israel.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Jesse Gabriel. I'm going to pick up where Daniel left off. The purpose of this campaign is to attack Israel's legitimacy and contest its very right to exist as a Jewish state. The aim of delegitimization, which seeks to isolate Israel as a pariah state and reject the notion of a two-state peaceful solution. Delegitimators garner support by appealing to college campuses, churches, labor unions, human rights organizations, and communities and populations who are deeply invested and concerned about civil liberties and freedoms. It is important to remember that boycotts, divestments, and sanctions are neutral tools designed to disempower errant states through economic pressure and world condemnation of human rights violations. The Jewish community has and does support divestment when these tools fit the such situation, as instance of South Africa in the 1980s and Iran today. However, Israel is a pluralistic, democratic society, and these tools are neither appropriate nor will they bring about peace. BDS is simply a movement that wants to tell an anti-Israel story that undermines Israel's right to exist by falsely equating Israel to racist and genocidal regimes.
My name is
Thank you.
Catherine Schneider. I will continue. Despite the facade of a campaign to improve the prospects for Israeli-Palestinian peace, the end goal of delegitimizers and BDS activists is to increase the isolation and eventual disappearance of the Jewish state. BDS campaigns carry an underlying sentiment that the very existence of a state for the Jewish people is the root cause of the Arab-Israeli conflict. Therefore, while we have no position on whether or not Veolia Transportation should be awarded the downtown dash contract, we are strongly opposed to the DVC's misguided effort to entangle the city in a complex territorial dispute that can only be resolved through direct negotiations between the parties. In particular, we believe that neither the city nor the many diverse communities that call Los Angeles home are well served by injecting such a complicated, divisive, and emotionally charged issue into the city contracting process. Similarly, we see no reason why the city should consider the foreign policy preferences of a vocal minority of anti-Israel activists ahead of the welfare of the many Angelenos who rely on and benefit from the downtown dash system. Simply put, connecting transportation policy decisions to the Arab-Israeli conflict is ill-advised and will needlessly divide our city and its residents.
Thank you.
I'm Debbie Diner Harris, and I will complete the letter. In addition to being bad policy, the approach advocated by the DVC may violate both California and federal law. In particular, were the city to follow the DVC's recommendation, it would likely be in violation of federal regulations and the California Business and Professional Code. More broadly, the DVC's position is directly at odds with decades of U.S. policy, which have recognized Israel as a critical American ally and the only true democracy in a volatile region. In light of the foregoing, we respectfully urge the City Council to adopt a resolution that explicitly and unequivocally affirms that issues related to the Arab-Israeli conflict will have no bearing on the award of city contracts. Adopting such a resolution would remove any uncertainty regarding the propriety and legality of the city's actions and would help to discourage future attempts to introduce improper considerations into city contracting decisions. Thank you for your consideration and for your attention to this important issue.
Thank you. Dave Rand, did you already speak? Okay. Debbie Diner Harris? Already spoke, okay. Daniel Gold? Okay. Douglas Barnett, to be followed by Hamid Khan and Louis or Lois, can't really tell, Garcia. Looks like Louis. Douglas Barnett.
My grandfather got to this city in 1878. I run the Quaker meeting in South Central Los Angeles. I'm also treasurer of the state Green Party. I only take public transportation. It's a little complex and it has nothing to do with drugs. The Quakers for 300 or 400 years refused to recognize rank, refused to take their hat off because the person behind the rank is responsible for their actions. You as elected officials are responsible for your actions. It is not just the golden calf that you worry about on this council. You also worry about what happens to the people of Los Angeles. All transportation is very heavily subsidized. Without grants for security, MTA wouldn't make a dime from the money they take from the box. The fact is Veolia, along with MTA, is very discriminatory, both in this county and other places. We built a school in Ramallah, the Quakers, over 120 years ago. Right and wrong is why we elected you. You make those decisions, not just the golden calf.
Thank you. Hamid Khan,
Hi, good afternoon.
followed
My
by
name is,
Louis Garcia.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Hamid Khan. About 25 years ago, I was traveling through South Africa, and we were on our way to Johannesburg. We stopped to find out our location where we were, and couldn't find that on the map. Upon asking the neighborhood, we found out that those communities were not even listed on the map because of the apartheid system. So this kind of system is facilitated by transportation systems. This kind of system is facilitated by policies. This kind of system is facilitated by support of countries like the United States as well, which considered ANC as a terrorist organization. So once again, we're back into a system that we are looking to support a vehicle that's going to cause invisibility of these of people. We're looking to support a system of a vehicle that's going to just completely perpetuate separate and unequal systems of governance. So the choice is yours. The decision of the people of Los Angeles you've heard. They are completely in opposition to this thing. So we demand that you reject this proposal and send a loud message that just like SB 1070, just what LA was a leader back in the South African apartheid movement, we're not going to stand by this thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Luis Garcia, and you'll be our last speaker unless one of the people that skipped shows up in the next minute. Thank you.
As a longtime resident of the greater Los Angeles area and a member of the Chicano Roundtable and the Senate Select Community Committee on California's correctional system, we urge the city to drop this contract because of the obvious human rights violations being testified to today. We, as Mexican-American prior sovereigns in our own lands, sympathize with the Palestinian struggle for their lands. And for those reasons, we believe that what Veolia is doing is just, again, perpetrating the same atrocities that have been happening in that land for a long time. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, if we could have staff come up and make a presentation on this item.
Good afternoon. Ida Rubio with the City Administrative Office. In February of 2012, the Department of Transportation released an RFP for the Dash Downtown and Dash Mid-City service areas, both service areas which were up for contract renewal. As you know, our bus service, transit services are operated by private operators, and they provide the management of all operation, personnel, and maintenance of the Dash buses, Commuter Express, and City Ride. DOT reports that 4 firms submitted proposals, all passed the initial screening and were interviewed by the evaluation panel, which consisted of DOT staff and staff from the LA Metropolitan Authority. After an extensive review of the proposal, including site visits, Veolia was selected as the best provider based on the cost effectiveness in the proposal and the overall value that they would provide to the city, which included factors such as proposed staffing and operating methodologies. The department is requesting authority to enter into a 5-year contract with Veolia for up to $160,298,955 million. The CAO office recommends this contract because it will provide a cost savings to the city over a 5-year period. A 5-year contract is more cost effective than a 3-year contract because it allows operators to secure better lease rates and allows capital costs related to the building of the CNG fueling stations to be amortized over a longer time period, and it provides for efficiencies in operations by consolidating service areas and combining staff and facility sharing for greater economies of scale. We do have a technical correction to the report to amend the contract start date and the end date. The new contract start date would be November 1st of 2012 to October 31st, 2017. Department of Transportation representatives are here to answer any specific questions you have on the contract or the RFP selection process. Thank you.
Can someone explain our existing relationship with the contractor and any problems that have been had with the contractor and how those have been worked out, if they have been, et cetera?
Good afternoon. Jim Lefton, Executive Officer for Transit Services with LADOT, and with me is Corrine Ralph, Head of Transit Operations for LADOT. Veolia is the incumbent contractor for the Dash Downtown and Mid-City Dash services, the services that are contained in the RFP that's being discussed today. They've been an operator for us for many years. As part of our evaluation, we did take into account the service that they provided for us, the job that they've done in terms of providing reliable service to our customers, and they are a solid performer for LADOT, and we are recommending a contract award for them to continue operating the services today.
What about safety considerations that was brought up in testimony? What have we done in terms of increasing push on safety, and what have we done in terms of making sure staffing is adequate, et cetera, et cetera?
Yes, in the RFP that we released, the safety was a high priority for LADOT, and Veolia in the opinion of the evaluation panel, presented the strongest proposal with regard to public safety. They recommended a number of technology solutions that should greatly improve safety, as well as staffing and other efforts to improve the safety culture. That being said, all of our contractors, including Veolia, have a very strong safety record. We have very low accident rates relative to other operators in the region, so they've been doing a good job, but not resting on our laurels. We're always looking to try to find ways to improve public safety. And with regard to staffing, Veolia proposed a higher level of staffing compared to any other proposer, including positions that were not required in the RFP. And some of that staffing included dedicated safety personnel, including a safety manager.
Okay. I wonder if we should have the representative from the company come forward and answer a couple of questions too.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Mark Wells. I'm an Area Vice President for Veolia Transportation.
You've got a good response from staff, and there's a lot expected from you in terms of dealing with the city and your customers and your employees. Can you talk briefly about how you intend to meet all those high expectations?
Well, the exciting part about going into a new contract arrangement, such as we have the opportunity to do here, is to kind of reset and refocus on what's important. Safety is very important for us. Protecting the rights and the effects that we have on our employees as well as the riders are very key in how we prepare and present a proposal. It should be noted that the proposal that we submitted on this project contained the highest wages and benefits and the highest staffing level of any of the proposers. In fact, we have a representative here from the Teamsters Union who is sitting in support of this proposal. We've had a very good working relationship with the Teamsters, and we look forward to that continuing going forward. As Mr. Lefton said, we have also included a number of innovations, including technological innovations, that will allow us to do a better job of monitoring performance of the vehicle operator as well as the conditions around the vehicle as it's in service. So we're very excited about what we've proposed. We think the citizens of Los Angeles will see a true benefit in the delivery of the service, and we're very excited to get started.
And I want to ask if I have your personal commitment to work with our staff and this committee to continue to strengthen Dash bus service throughout the period of this contract.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, if there's nothing more important to my personal job, it's to make sure that this contract is successful for the city as well as for Veolia.
Thank you. Other questions from members, comments? Mr. Weezer?
I just want to re-ask that question again about safety. One of the public comments mentioned Chatsworth and the incidents that happened there. Anything we could learn from that? Do we evaluate that or use that in our evaluations in selecting a provider?
Yes, obviously the department staff and the evaluation panel was certainly very aware of the accident that took place with Metrolink, and I think that LADOT, along with many other transit agencies and Metrolink itself, since that time have done a good job of strengthening their operations to improve public safety. As I mentioned, the RFP that we put out presented safety as a high priority for LADOT. In the responses that Veolia provided, one of the technology options that they proposed was a smart drive camera system that runs continuously inside and outside the vehicle. So in the case of the Metrolink accident where there was a driver that was reportedly texting while operating the train, this camera system will allow Veolia to be able to determine what drivers are doing, not just if there's an accident, but all the time. So if a driver is texting or not wearing a seatbelt or some unsafe activity, they'll be able to see that on the tape and be able to counsel and train that driver to do things properly. So that's just one example of how technology and the efforts of Veolia to improve public safety have been addressed through this RFP process.
And when we see a recommendation from staff, and yet there were other proposals that are lower cost. Can you explain that? And why would you select on a
Certainly.
higher cost?
Certainly. MV Transportation, who is the operator of all the services that are not contained in this RFP, was the lowest cost proposer under this RFP process. What the panel typically does in these situations is to evaluate, to determine whether it's more cost effective to go with the lowest cost firm or a more expensive firm. Sometimes when a firm bids lower than everybody else, you may be missing certain key aspects of operations that you feel you need to provide quality service to the public. In this case, we found that MV proposed 17% less staff than Veolia. That's 44 full-time equivalent employees. That number amounted to the total difference in cost between MV and Veolia, $12 million over the term of the contract. We compared that staffing level to the other proposers. MV was lower than the other proposers as well. MV was lower than our existing staffing levels. The panel felt very concerned that the very low staffing levels proposed by MV would negatively impact the service. And even though the recommendation for Veolia is higher than MV, it is still, over the term of the contract, $2 million less than what we're currently paying today. So if the recommendation for Veolia is approved, we anticipate a $2 million cost savings over what our current costs are projected over the next 5 years.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions. I would just like to make the, Mr. Levant.
Just wanted to say something. Just reading everything, including letters that I've received and stuff, listening to the testimony. And I want to thank everybody for this opportunity to speak, and everybody. Especially want to thank the daughter, Marion Gibbons, who was a champion to saving that building almost 40 years ago. But I think the CAO's report reflects what the city attorney spoke of in the opening of this meeting and what I've reviewed. So I would just say I'm going to recommend, and my vote goes to the CAO's report. Thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, I want to say it's no secret I'm a supporter of Israel, but that's not before us. Am I a big fan of everything that they do, including their settlement policy? Not necessarily. But that's also not before us. What is before us is a very specific motion and a very specific law about how we do our contracting. We have policies about who we do business with and who we do not, and this is a very clear question in terms of law. We have to pick the best choice for the city of Los Angeles.
So racism doesn't come into it? Because you are Jewish, you have it.
I do want to say this council should not be bullied by people shouting in the audience and by large numbers of people coming here to testify. And I will have to say also, I don't believe every allegation just because it's made in the microphone. I think we have a process that we have to go through. I think there's only one really clear legal choice for us, and that is to approve this contract. And so I move that item, and like to ask the clerk to have a roll call vote.
And the recommendation is approve as amended with the technical correction.
Yes, there is a technical correction. The start date is being changed from October 28th to November 1st.
City Hall.
Shame! 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 Shame!
Item 5, recommendation that's amended. Koretz?
Aye.
Lavange?
Aye.
Rizar?
Aye.
That is approved.
That is approved unanimously. Next, I'd like to move to item number 1.
Item number 1 is a communication from the mayor relative to the reappointment of Mr. David Malcolm Carson to the Board of Transportation Commissioners.
Sarge. Yeah. Thanks, Sergeant.
Thank you, sir.
No. You can't speak out of order. No. No.
Are they supposed to be playing with their smartphones rather than focusing? Shame on you guys. What are we paying for?
Item number 1 is Mr. Carson present? Yes, there we are.
Councilmember Kretz, thank you.
Welcome. If you'd like to tell us a little about yourself, you have a long resume, but I'd have to ask you to tell us a little about yourself and why you can make this commission more effective.
Sure. So I'm a born Angelino, not necessarily a raised one. I grew up in the Bay Area a little bit, but I've been in LA for a long time, a lot of my life.
Niner Raider fan.
Oh, neither. I'm waiting for the LA team.
There you go.
Yeah. So I got involved in transportation policy issues as a student and I did a graduate degree program in urban planning and focused a lot on transportation issues I've been working as an attorney with the Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles for the past 10 years, and one of my kind of bailiwicks there is looking at transportation issues and transportation policies from the point of view of low-income community residents. And so I kind of came into the commission with a broad kind of background in all kinds of different transportation issues, development issues, and public transit issues, the built environment and everything that goes around. It's been, so I've served one term. I think I got appointed just slightly at the very end of the last term, but basically I've served one term, and I've enjoyed it a lot. It's been a great chance to kind of get an inside view on what the city's doing in terms of transportation, and I think some of the things that have changed that I hope that I played at least a small role in is that, we were trying to get, when I first came, I think the response of the city to development issues when there was a need for mitigation or something like that, a big project coming, it was usually widen the street, put in a new stoplight, something kind of along those lines. And I kind of started pushing for just a bigger toolkit for the city to have, so that if a development comes in, there's just a wider variety of things that could be done other than just kind of widening the streets. We're out of space in everybody kind of knows we're out of space in LA, so we have to basically get more use out of the streets that we do have. And I think it's been opened up. I've seen more EARs come across, and there's issues around encouraging transit and making the sidewalks better, and making it easier for people to access transit and all that. So hopefully I can continue to do that. I think there's some exciting things that we just started getting involved in, and I'm thinking that how we can really solve a lot of our problems here in LA that we've started getting involved with is the social media and the mobile technology. So if the study, the experts will tell you that just take 10% out of a traffic jam, and you've got free-flowing traffic again. And so what we want to do is maybe see if we can get 10% of the population to be intelligent in real time with the technology that's out there. And in the city, we have that talent. We have an AdSac, we have everything all hooked up. And so we just need to get other people locked into that And so that 10% can choose another route, and then maybe we can get the traffic flowing again. And I think there's a lot of potential. We might be the ones in LA that are noteworthy for having made a major impact on traffic, because we're ideally set up for it. We have a good freeway system. Actually, it's just overburdened, but it's a good freeway system. And we have a public transit system that's an alternative for people to use. And so hopefully we can do it.
Just on a roadway system too, there is, you said you're changing this. There's certain roads that have to carry traffic that parallel, and I don't want to see all roads turn into lanes. I want to see them. I want the department, I'll send a letter to the commission to look, what roads are you going to continue to have as major traffic corridors? Vermont, Western, North, South, La Brea, East, West, and what streets? I know Mr. Reyes did a wonderful thing on 7th Street from downtown through to the Mid-Wilshire, Koreatown area of giving a road diet. Which works for road diet, but what has to be preserved for trucks, buses, and heavy travel? And then finding the adjacent opportunities for bike routes and stuff like that. Where'd you go to high school?
High school?
Yeah.
At Palo Alto.
Palo Alto, okay, good, okay. All right, I'm going to vote for you.
Okay, thanks a lot. Well,
Mr. Weezer, any questions, comments?
No, thank you. I just want to say go Bears, and twice, right? Undergrad and law school.
Actually, no, I got 2 degrees from there,
Howard
both in graduate.
Oh, you got 2 degrees, master's, and that's a lot of schooling.
Yeah, I know. Way too much money. I'm still paying for it.
I look at my student loans as a second mortgage. But anyway, that's a conversation for another day. People don't want to hear that. We hear about transportation policy. No, I actually worked at legal aid through a public interest law foundation grant I received in the summer, and worked at the East LA Legal Aid Foundation Community Economic Development, the Economic Development Unit.
Oh, great.
And sometimes folks think, well, what are attorneys doing in transportation panels? But this is a unit that looks at these types of issues and looks how we improve the quality of life. And being that transportation in the city of LA is critical to that quality of life, I think you bring a much needed perspective to this panel. So I welcome you and thank you for your service. I know it takes a lot of time to do the work you do and do this, so we appreciate your time. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
And I personally thank you for your service and your willingness to continue working hard at this, and I will ask that we approve your recommendation without objection. If there's no objection, that is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, item number 6.
Item number 6 is a DOT report relative to the results and findings of the Congestion Mitigation Fee Nexus study prepared by the Los Angeles County Metropolitan Transportation Authority.
Am I doing that? And we have one speaker from the public, so why don't we do that first quickly. Barry Johnson.
I'm here, but I was not prepared to comment until after hearing the staff report.
Okay, I'll be happy to do that. All right.
So, Mr. Chair, is this item 6?
Yes.
So this will be the joint committee?
Yes.
All right, so I just want to formally open up the Planning and Land Use Management Committee. As the Councilmember Weezer is also part of that committee, so we do have a quorum.
And we, of course, have a quorum of Transportation Committee as well, and this is a joint meeting with the Transportation Committee and the Plum Committee.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Tom Carranza. I'm with LA DOT's Development Services Division. Staff from LA County MTA is here today to present the status of the Congestion Mitigation Fee Program. MTA has identified 4 main phases of implementing this program, and they're currently completing the 3rd phase. And so we've invited them today to let us know where they are and what the next steps are in the program. I, as well as Jay Kim from LA DOT, are here in case you have questions from the staff. But for now, I'd like to introduce Brad McAllister and Robert Calix from MTA.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Robert Calix. I work in the Long Range Planning Department with my executive officer who's in charge of the Long Range Planning and Coordination Department at MTA. And thank you for the time for allowing us to come here and present this work that we've been doing now for a number of years with LA DOT and the other 88 jurisdictions throughout Los Angeles County. And simply stated is what we've been looking at is a feasibility of a fee, mitigation fee, across all land uses. Now, different terms are used in different places. Some cities call it development impact fee, a fee on new development, or traffic impact fee. We call it congestion mitigation fee because the driving force behind that is the congestion management program that has been in place by state statute that voters have passed through Prop 111 in 1991 or 1990, and we've been managing this program for the last 20 years as part of the Congestion Management Agency here in Los Angeles County with the MTA. So we've been working with 89 jurisdictions to be in compliance. However, a number of years ago, our MTA board directed us to look at an alternative way of complying with the CMP for a number of reasons, one of them being funding shortage, another one being in terms of cities not being in compliance with the CMP due to the methodology we've been using. We have been exploring for the last few years a fee on new development across all land uses with 89 jurisdictions in LA County.
And to that point, when you talk about compliance, you started in the early 90s, correct?
Yes.
So between then and today, how have we been graded and or have we been compliant? How many times have we been compliant?
We've been compliant every single year for the last 21 years since the legislations went into effect. And up until now, every jurisdiction has been filing their reports annually, including the City of Los Angeles, through a self-certification process, and that's how we've been doing it. However, in terms of how we comply, the methodology that was used is what's being revised. So if anything is new, is the methodology, not necessarily the program. And so that's what we've been exploring now for the last number of years.
And we're looking at state and federal regulatory standards that we're meeting?
It's a state statute.
State statute.
Passed as Proposition 111 back in 1990. And what's been attached to that is what is called the Section 2105 gas tax revenue that then comes through us and gets redistributed across all the jurisdictions in Los Angeles, of which Los Angeles gets a good percentage of. Approximately $35 million a year comes through as flow-through revenue to the City of Los Angeles.
So all the intersections that are at F, we have F standards, F levels in different regions and different areas, and we're still compliant?
Well, there's a plan called the Countywide Deficiency Plan, and we are deficient in many ways. So what we've been trying to do is to be in compliance through trying to improve, however difficult it's been, as a countywide agency, to be in compliance with the CMP. And that's why one of the chapters in there is called Deficiency Plan. Because we are deficient, then we need to show that we're trying to improve our deficiency.
Gotcha.
And one of the ways of doing that is what we've been exploring is this fee on new development. Then the local control aspect of this program is to identify projects that help each jurisdiction deal with their growth challenges over the next 20 years in their own way. So there's actually been 89 jurisdictions who have submitted a list of projects that they feel is reflective of the way they want to deal with it, and City of LA has then submitted as a pilot study.
I understand, but I'm having a hard time with this because City of LA is, how many people in City of LA? Close to 4 million?
Yes.
And you mentioned 89 cities, but you're talking about cities that are in the hundreds of thousands?
Yes.
Maybe 30,000, maybe 80,000. I mean, and then you have us at one of 89.
Yes.
Yet the folks that live in this small city here and work on this small city are driving through our city.
Yes.
And so we carry the burden of 80% of the traffic and everything else that deals with infrastructure, yet the other small cities, I mean, we start understanding
the magnitude
of that. So I just want to make sure I keep that in perspective.
Yes.
When you mention 89 cities, it's not like they're all 3 million people.
No, they're not, sir.
So I just want to make sure that that's
of
out there. So, okay, thank you.
And if I could just interject on that point, one of the, as Robert describes the mitigation fee program, one of the goals of the program is to create a level playing field across all of these different jurisdictions. And clearly Los Angeles has complexity of problems that isn't rivaled by anyone else, but you also have neighbors that contribute to your traffic, as you just mentioned. And so part of this program is a countywide approach to create kind of a level playing field so all jurisdictions are doing the same level of effort.
So when you talk about land use elements like housing, when cities are supposed to be absorbing their share of housing density because of the nature of their zoning and manufacturing, commercial and industrial zones, that in of itself begins to deal with the issue of jobs, housing balance. Yet we know there are cities that are not carrying their fair share of housing. So is there any mention of those types of dynamics in this analysis?
This is really looking at the transportation component of that. So, as cities, there's a local control component in this. So every city does make those decisions on housing and land use. But in looking at the transportation component, through this program, they have to mitigate those impacts to a certain level. And because we are deficient in Los Angeles County,
No,
we have
absolutely,
some level
but
of service F.
But you're kind of looking at this with one eye closed.
But
Because the transportation is a result of where people live and where they work, and where they're allowed to live and where they're allowed to work. And that generates the trips.
Yes, and I think, Brad, one of the things that really came out through this process, Mr. Councilman, has been when cities submitted their list of projects, and of course LA being the largest, when the surrounding cities began to see what City of LA is doing, they began to look at, maybe we should be doing something similar like they're doing. And the City of LA was able to look at, through this web-based tool that we provided for everybody to participate in, you start seeing what everyone else is choosing, and that actually influenced the projects that were selected by surrounding jurisdictions, by what your leadership, through your staff, allowed us to do. And one of them was bicycle investment. Before, this kind of program did not include bicycle investment. Today, as a result of LADOT providing leadership in that area, you have bicycle investment included, pedestrian investment, as long as there's a link to transit, and then also TDM, best practices of TDM. So as a result of that, we've been able to now show other cities that they can do the same. And that has helped now bring a little more cohesion in terms of what type of project categories have been selected.
This presentation is about the beginning steps of how that's being structured in terms of analysis,
Yes.
in terms of weights, and in terms of how we can move forward in
Yes.
making a policy decision as to the mitigation fee and the
Yes.
mitigation costs,
Yes.
and which projects are going to be aligned with those fees.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's why we did it, a pilot study, to see what would it look like, what would it do, does it make sense to even do it, would enough revenue be generated, are other cities also going to get on board? And as a result of that, you kind of kick the tires, kind of check it out, and it's helped us understand better, does this make sense? And it's helped other subregions to look at what they're doing as a cohesive group, where before they didn't do that. So it's taken us a while, a little longer than any of us thought it was going to take, but it got us to the point to more fully understand what others are doing. And that's what this is designed to do.
I mean, I have some concerns about the possible sort of one-size-fits-all approach, because number one, I think this could be a discouragement for development in some areas. So I don't disagree that we charge everyone a fee, but I'm not sure it should be the same fee, and that we shouldn't divide the city into regions, particularly as we've lost our economic development tool with the CRA. One might assume that some of those CRA areas might be charged a lesser fee to make it easier to encourage development. I mean, then in some areas, like much of my district, where we already have a plan where we charge fees, and we probably should charge higher fees than we're currently charging. We don't necessarily want to make it easier to do mega developments, and if we do, we want to be sure that developers pay a significant portion of the cost of transportation and other things. So I hope at least we're looking at those issues.
Yes, and that's why we've done 8 pilot studies throughout the county. Because one of the questions was, what are we looking at? Just one size fits all, or are we going to look at our individual subregion? So we did 8. And what all it's done at this point is to give you the big picture as a city. In the next step, we will then finalize program development, meaning dealing with these kinds of issues. How is the city of Los Angeles going to deal with their challenges within the city? Not just what others are doing, but within the city. And the same issues are going to be dealt with countywide. So we agree the one size fits all isn't, and that's why we did this pilot study, so that we can begin to get our arms around these kinds of questions. So it's not final by any means, but it's pointing us in a direction of getting resolution to those types of questions. And we're taking note of that, and we're going to make sure to document that so that we don't forget and we're reminded to do that in the next step.
I'd just like to add the other positive aspect about doing this pilot study is that we now have the tool to actually evaluate those policy concerns. Do you have a single fee across the board for the city, or do you have different fee structure across the city? And because we do have this tool, we can actually go in and test different scenarios and see what makes sense. And I think that's a big, important positive outcome of doing the pilot study.
Any other questions? Mr. Labange?
I believe there's 21 or 22 cities that are adjacent to Los Angeles, like Long Beach, Inglewood, at some parts, Calabasas, San Fernando, et cetera, Burbank, Glendale, unincorporated East LA. I wonder, Mr. J. Kim, who you're one of the top engineers in our department, have we ever met with those other cities that are just adjacent? Because as the representative of MTA said, you're trying to get a nexus, following up on Mr. Reyes is saying, have we ever brought ourselves into the room with those other areas so the work that is done in their city matches what we're doing in some
We haven't met recently, but there was an earlier effort where we did have stakeholder meetings where it included representatives from surrounding cities. And when this whole Nexus study program began, they were at the table actually raising these very
well, I think it's good, like once a year you meet or twice a year.
I mean, we can do that. Just compare it.
And also unincorporated county, so if you look at that, I know it would be good. The thing I don't like the 110 thing that you got up, you're going to turn on soon. I like the carpool lane. Yeah, now is it still going to be a carpool lane, or is it just a transit way?
I don't know about the congestion pricing issue. I'm sorry.
You know anything?
That issue.
Is it still a carpool lane, or is it?
I believe it's.
Yes.
I believe it's a carpool.
But then a
Also
person without a carpool could pay to be in there?
I don't know the details of that.
That seems like you get paid to smoke.
Councilman Labange, I wish I could answer it more fully.
Anyway, all right, so carry on. Choke points are the biggest thing. Not all the roads, they should pick the roads that are going to carry the buses, the trucks, and the traffic, and articulate that. Protected Pauline Chan. You know Pauline Chan?
Yes.
Yeah, she's one of the best in this neighborhood protection zone.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Weezer.
Mr. Weezer.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Weezer, good.
For our staff, what are the rules as to what the city can use these fees for, the revenue? What have we been using them for? But generally speaking, what are the rules?
Generally speaking, it's all modes of transportation improvements, PEDs, bikes.
Anything pretty much related to transportation.
So basically, as we test these specific improvements and we model them, those will they will actually become eligible. And so in our modeling, that's exactly what we did. That's what actually Metro has done, is they've actually input roadway widening projects, signal synchronization projects, head improvements,
Now,
so
the planning
transit
department,
improvements. So all that
department is one area where, it's not, there's a relationship and a nexus to transportation. Community plans, for example, we as a city are way behind in our community plans. We're always looking for funding for those. Can these types of fees be used for community plans? Updating our community plans.
That's probably a Metro question, because I'm not too sure if a portion of the funds could be diverted to actually conduct studies. Because for the most part, the fees are collected to implement projects, but I will let them answer that question.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the California Mitigation Fee Act kind of directs the use of the funds, and the funds have to be used for project-specific purposes. So if you were designing a project, you could use it for that, but a community plan wouldn't be eligible.
And finally, what happened at Central City West?
I think the fees were quite high. And in our experience, we do have 5 different fee program areas where we do collect the developer trip fees. So in our experience, there is kind of a sweet spot somewhere between, say, $3,000 to $8,000 per trip. If you were to charge that, the developers have been able to sort of pass that on to the consumers, if you will, and they've been able to sort of make the numbers work, and it's kind of worked out okay. Where it didn't become necessarily a deterrent for private investment to occur in that particular area. In the Central City West case, the fees were pretty high, probably in the order of anywhere from 2 to 4 times as high as some of the other areas. And that actually became a barrier. And so, in fact, people have steered away from doing commercial development in the Central City West area because of the exorbitant fees. So we've been working with Metro, and our message has always been that they need to find that kind of a sweet spot where that it can be sort of accommodated by the developers and passed on.
But there's a good example where you have a specific plan that spoke to density levels and heights of commercial buildings that, because of the CMP and the pressure points from the freeways going into the neighborhoods, they thought the fees need to be this high to pay for the anticipated on-ramps and off-ramps caused by the zoning, which generated very specific development scenarios that was never realized. This is going back to the early 1990s when that real estate cycle blew up. So now we have this disconnect. We still have those fees there, I assume. Because I know I have changed some of the fees in the past, and I can't recall if we changed the transportation fees. I think we lowered some of them.
Fees have been lowered. I believe it was in the upwards of $18,000 per trip
Right.
at one time. It's been reduced down to about 13.
Well, we brought them down about 8 years ago or so.
But even then, we still had.
They're still very high, but it begs the question that's being raised by Councilman Weezar. If we're going to be funding projects and programs that are going to be addressing the CMP, but there's a disconnect with local zoning patterns, then we need the resources to be able to deal with scenarios that truly addresses the CMP issues. And so there is the tension that exists today. I didn't realize that the fees that we left it at were still so high compared to other parts of the city. And if I would have known that, we would have pushed for even lower fees.
And the other issue with the Central City West Plan is fees are only charged of office development. So you have one land use that's overburdened, covering the cost of the projects.
So I would hope that in the wisdom of this process that, and I didn't mean to be, how can I put this, when I said we are doing this with one eye open, is that we truly, I see that there has to be the ability to create that connectivity between our zoning patterns and what that's going to generate in our traffic trips so that we can truly get to a CMP process that is consistent with what's happening in the built-out environment and the circulation issues. But you're saying, but it's state law that prohibits us from doing that? From using resources to address our need to update our community plans and or implement specific plans?
A congestion mitigation fee, a developer fee like this, like the ones that you have implemented in your city, the state law does, the money has to go towards the project or activities.
Right, so it has to be like a direct nexus, direct line to the fee.
Yeah, exactly.
So
that's the issue that
but there's a local policy we could look at that allows us to perhaps take a stream of that to deal with the community plan, a specific plan, once it gets to the project. I mean, there's different ways of approaching this.
It might be something that we could explore with the city and with legal staff. I mean, we're dealing with the legal issues.
Okay.
We're dealing with.
Hi, I'm De La Vega, DOT. My suggestion for the committee and the council would be if you're generally supportive of this policy, you should request MTA staff to go back to their CEO and the MTA board to request funding for the type of planning work you're interested in. And that is not unprecedented. MTA has, in the last 2 years, provided TOD funding to the City of LA and other jurisdictions in recognition of the fact that there is a linkage and correlation between transit planning, operations, and use and land use at local municipalities. So even though the CMP revenue might not be usable for planning from a land use perspective, MTA could bring other resources to the table and bundle those so that we could address both the land use side and the CMP side at the same time.
When we look at the different variables that impact circulation, transit dependency is a big issue in terms of how we get a number of people riding buses and shuttles and jumping on our light rail systems and the heavy rail. So when you look at the transit dependency, you look at the density, then you look at the poverty that's connected to transit dependency. Then you have a lack of planning in areas that have the greatest pressure points in the city. I mean, there's a disconnect here. And that in of itself should offer some light as to how we prioritize movement of people and goods. So when you look at that, how can I put this, this disconnect, then to me, the CMP will continue to I don't want to use falter, but the deficiencies will continue until we start creating this balancing act. And that'll take years, but I remember this conversation in the mid-'80s when we did not want to look at how we weighed certain parts of the city. We ignored factors like poverty. We ignored transit dependency. Instead, we looked at other efficiencies. That made sense, but we just ignored it. So it's a different city today. So you have, 40, 50,000 new people living in downtown now? I have 70,000 people per square mile in the Pico Union Westlake area. We have a challenge to get our goods and services from the harbor into the inland empire and into the Midwest. How are they going to get there when we're not organizing and synchronizing these issues? So I would say that would be, if I can make that as a formal request, a letter from our city, from the planning department, to look at these land use specific plan issues, community plan issues, and help me with the language to get that message to them, and see how we can create that nexus.
The general manager brought up a good solution, and I think Mr. Reyes is making that request. I just want to be clear. How does that request happen? How do we make that possible?
I think there are a couple of different avenues. I mean, obviously at a staff-to-staff level, we'll work with MTA staff directly. I think council could also formalize that request in the form of...
Would you today to formalize that, Mr. City Attorney?
Well, I think it could be a motion or it could be a letter from either the council as a whole or one of you making that request. And I also think that, Councilman Huizer, I think you could also work with the mayor's office on potential action at the MTA board legislatively.
Well, I'll work on a motion to be very direct and clear and public about our request. Being a board member, there's another channel there as well, but I think if we hit it from different fronts, it would be getting the message clear that we need to create that nexus between the transportation corridors, transportation pressures we have with our land use patterns.
You know, the board ultimately decides the amount of the fee, correct? The MTA board, we don't. Or do we? Who decides the amount of the fee?
The fee in terms of what we're looking at when we go from sub-region to sub-region is to be compliant with the CMP is we would be exploring a minimum, either a countywide or sub-regional minimum. Cities would be able to choose a fee higher than that, but we're trying to level the playing field across all 89 jurisdictions across the county. So we haven't arrived at that amount yet.
Okay.
However, in here, it gives you your idea.
Yeah, but I think just to be clear, if the MTA Board of Directors adopts this policy, it would essentially mandate the LA City Council to adopt a minimum fee or risk losing other funding.
Yes.
That's correct.
That's correct.
So we would have to adopt that fee, not anything higher.
You can adopt higher.
Right, but I just want to be clear for the council that, you need to pay attention to the MTA board process, because if the council as a whole does not think this fee is a good idea, or you don't agree with the structure, you need to make sure that the modifications happen before the MTA board acts.
Right, you. And going back to the Central City West area, now, would a countywide or a sub-region fee impact depending what model's used? That situation, or is that?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand your question.
Whether we adopt a countywide fee or a sub-region fee, that has nothing to do with us setting fees too high at that region.
Is the question that the new fee would be added on to the existing fee?
Yeah.
Is that the concern?
No.
Okay.
No. Our intent is not to add a fee on top or take a percentage of yours by any means. We're just looking for compliance with the CMP, but we're not looking to tag on. All right, we're not saying that your fee should be higher.
Just want to be clear.
So in the areas where you currently have a fee, if you are already above the minimum adopted by the board, you would be getting credit for what you're already collecting. So, so it wouldn't be impacting you adversely. You'd be getting credit for the fact that you're already doing that in certain areas.
Because you already have areas in your city where you're doing this already. Your staffs submitted that list of projects. It showed a nexus. It showed a congestion reduction of 9% across the city. Other subregions did similar things. And on the minimum end, the fee range has been between $200 to $500 per trip.
Okay, but mechanically, if the minimum fee set by the board comes in lower, and now Central City West has a higher one,
you're fine.
They're fine, but how do you reduce the fee if you want a fee?
You can reduce your own local fee lower. That's your local control.
Yeah, so you would have to revise the current existing specific plan that governs that fee, and we can do that locally.
Okay.
Yeah, we did that once already. We need to do it. We need to do it again.
Yes.
Given economy. But let me ask you, given how much more will we need to do? Do we have to do this city-wide then if we agree, or just depends on how we, over time, allot these fees based on the projects? Is this an umbrella that covers the whole city?
Yes.
Can you articulate?
Yes, it's a program designed to cover the entire city across all land uses. But we're looking, if we were to get the green light by the MTA board, it would take upwards, we're expecting, or we hope, 2 years to develop the program and implement it, because there's a lot of these kinds of issues that would have to be ironed out. And I have in mind the city of Los Angeles, because you have a lot of things that you have to deal with. In other cities that are smaller, would be a lot shorter period of time, but we would be looking at enough time so that all these issues are fleshed out and it's done the way it should be.
So will the city of Los Angeles be notified, and will you work with us on what the minimum fee is, or are we just going to learn about it after the fact?
Oh, this is part of the process that we're going through right now. And what we've presented to you today is the results of the pilot study done for your city. And it came in at a little bit over $400 per trip, or about $3,700 per single-family home for a new home. And
I just want to be sure we have the opportunity to look at this carefully and make sure it's not a disincentive in the areas where we're concerned about a disincentive to development.
Precisely. In 2007, the MTA board passed a set of guiding principles, of which number one is we want to be mindful of local economic development policies so that a fee doesn't become a discouraging issue. And we've been meeting with the building industry on this for the last 2.5 years to take in their comments. Now, to be clear, they're not in support of any fee by anybody in anywhere. But if there's going to be a fee that's going to be discussed or approved in any way, they've asked to be at the table. And that's what we've done. And one of the processes is we'll take this list of projects that the city has identified and share it with them as well. And we're doing that with each subregion, by the way.
So if we have existing regions like Warner Center, Center City West, those fees currently exist. Let's assume down the line this is adopted. That means that the rest of the area will have fees triggered, but the ones that already exist will stay intact until we change them?
Yes. Precisely.
Any more questions, comments?
Mr. Chair. Just one other point. I think the council, given your current policy and priorities to focus at least in part on transit-oriented development, I think MTA should be looking at potentially exempting TOD areas from the fee itself. If you really want to encourage development and investment next to transit stations, which are primarily owned and operated by MTA, you might want to consider having no fee in those areas to create a fiscal incentive.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
In the congestion management program, it was legislated that very low-income housing would be exempt, and also development within a quarter mile, but high-density development within a quarter mile of a passenger rail station. Okay? So there are exemptions built into the CMP by law that actually your city has taken advantage of over the last 20 years. There aren't a lot of areas, but it's in place already in terms of high-density development.
Let me give an example. I'm working on 66 acres between the Chinatown Light Rail and the Lincoln Heights Light Rail stations. It's 660 acres. Now, each parcel will be provided the opportunity to have a menu of different incentives that are transit in nature, environmental, affordable housing. So since it's not just 1/4 of a mile, the reaches are farther, it's between two stations. If I were to just follow that strict rule, the middle portion of that area would not qualify, which would throw the whole balance of the 66 acres off. So I think we need to figure out how to be a little bit more flexible when you have a hill-specific plan whose trigger is to lower trips because you have incentives for bicycles, you have road diets being introduced, you have open space, all the elements that gets people out of cars, pedestrian-friendly design. There's a whole menu that's part of this specific plan. I'd like to put that on the table so that we can research the potential of looking at perhaps a tiered approach in distance, given the amenities that are being offered in a specific area. Because it attaches itself to the very concept of what the TOD is trying to do. It's just that we're making it into a whole neighborhood. And that's already in play right now.
Yeah, I think MTA staff should check with county council to the extent that they may have flexibility to incorporate those sort of guidelines or modifications. And if that's not permissible, then I think the council and MTA board should consider seeking changes to state legislation to tweak that to accommodate the policy goals you're talking about, Councilman.
Okay.
And to be able to explore that, I would have to ask that some letter or communication be sent that's very clear as to what exactly is being asked, so that I don't miscommunicate or any of us miscommunicate.
Why don't you just come to my office and we'll show you?
Oh, I'm sure you would. Okay.
All right.
But to give it, as you know, to give it to county council, they like to see in writing exactly what is being discussed. That's all.
They're smart at county council. You could tell them verbally as well. Get the ball rolling.
All right.
So I guess we move just to receive and file this report, obviously with a follow-up on questions that were raised at this vote. So that'll be moved without objection by... I'm sorry. Barry Johnson, we have one speaker from the public.
Barry Johnson, Studio City Neighborhood Council, Transportation Committee member. I just wanted to say that I heard one of the gentlemen from MTA mention developers at the table, quote unquote, and I would like to ask that our city ask that neighborhood councils be at the table. We have found in Studio City that the MTA is not really aware of that we have neighborhood councils in the city of Los Angeles, and would like to see them reminded of our existence since we are at the base of government in this city. So I would ask that you would help that effort along. Thank you.
Thank you, and I think that's a fair point, so I would at least encourage that direction to be considered as well as part of the follow-up of other suggestions that were made. And now I'd move that we receive and file that report without objection by the Transportation Committee.
Okay, and as part of the Plum Committee, we will also move to receive and file, seeing no one else here for public comment. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we go back to the regular meeting of the Transportation Committee and start with item number 3.
Didn't we consent? 4. Right? You said 3, but didn't we consent that?
Item number 3.
Item number 3 is the Department of Transportation report relative to restoring a full range of services at Department District Engineering offices. I thought he said we consented that. Was this the one we consented?
Good afternoon, Selwyn Hollins, Executive Officer, Los Angeles Department of Transportation. What we have before you is a report that outlines our strategy for restoring the various services that are provided at the district offices. Many of the services were removed or discontinued as a result of budget cuts roughly 2 or 3 years ago. However, the department is using new strategies to try to restore those services, and those strategies include establishing a new district research and support group, which we have completed, a new college intern program to provide additional staffing support for the districts, policy revisions, which we're actively working on, an intake center to streamline the telephone calls that we received, and finally a service request system that is under development and eventually will be launched to the public with the target date of January. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Yeah, I'm glad to see some progress in restoring some of these services. And I know you're talking about updating and streamlining department policies and procedures. How are you going to evaluate those changes over time?
Many of our policies and procedures are driven by our own internal policies. And so what we're looking to do is, in a lot of cases, cut out maybe some of the steps that are involved. Any policies where we feel it has of high interest to the council, we intend to present those to council so that they can be participative in those policy changes. And I know you deal with real estate development in two ways. During environmental review and track map work, your staff allows developers to pay extra if they want expedited service. But there's some services like clearances on building permits and haul routes and driveway and access plans and some other things that still go through the district office, and there doesn't seem to be a way to pay for quicker service. Is there any way for us to establish a program where we could charge more for those services and expedite them as well? Definitely, that would be the type of task that our district research and support group is undertaking. We are actually about to begin a number of studies on different ways we could expedite various services as well as collect fees for fee recovery as appropriate.
Because there are a lot of ways that cost developers enough money that they could pay for expedited services, actually save the city some money perhaps, or at least be a break even, but we get the economic development tool of getting things done more quickly. Of course, we lose some business because of how slow we are, so the more we can streamline, the more business I think we attract. Also, I know there are some things that we've had developers include in their development agreements and pay for, and then at any price, the DOT still says they can't do it. For instance, we have a condo development where a developer fully funded speed humps. So whatever the cost is, wherever we go to a contractor, we have the money for these speed humps. So money isn't an object for us. Why are we unable to accept that money and go and use it to provide the service?
The Speed Up program is obviously one of those programs that we know is a big concern. We are committed to restoring the speed hump program, but however, funding is an issue. If funding is provided, we'll take the necessary steps to do the analysis and so forth. We are looking at revising our speed hump program and bringing that to council as a policy change, because some of the parameters of it is a very intensive process, and we're looking to streamline it. At the present time, that is contributing to part of the delay. It's the internal policy.
Well, it's not just a delay. I mean, in this particular case, the people have been told no. The developer that wants to pay for it has been told no. Right. We will not hire a contractor. We will not oversee it. We won't charge you any price. It's just a no, and that makes no sense. Right. At some point, it can't cost us money if it's fully funded. Then just do it.
And we're here today to tell you that all those services are being restored. That's what the purpose of this report is, to clarify that we are committed to restoring all the services.
Any idea of how quickly that particular one, at least at full cost recovery, can be restored, much less doing it as we were doing it, where it cost us X number of thousands of dollars and we provided it for free, but at least where developers are willing to pay for it and have paid for it, where we can actually use that money and start implementing it.
The request has been submitted, I understand?
It's been submitted and turned down.
Do you know, either of you know? Okay, we'll take a look at that.
Thank you, I
Respond
appreciate
accordingly.
that. Mr. LeBon.
Yeah, just real quick, good idea. I see Brian Gallagher always said, I think when he was in Hollywood Wilshire, a lot got done. When your engineers are in an area, the way you use student workers for, the only thing I ask that you have a call in the next month, a meeting with the field deputies who are in the area, the district directors, just to get their input and put it together and find a way to do it. And use our city halls, because there's space in them. Thank you. You got that,
Thank
Brian?
you. One other question, are there any code changes, other changes we can make to help you all restore services? What can we do to help as a council?
Well, one of the things is we like to come back at mid-year after we implement most of these, or probably all of them will be implemented. In particular, when we implement the new automated system, we'll be able to give you empirical data on where the demands are, who's requesting them, the time it takes us to do it, what resources we need. So I think before we commit to or recommend anything, I'd rather come with that information, and that information will be totally transparent to everyone, the public, as well as internal decision makers.
And obviously, I can't speak for the chair, Mr. Rosendahl, but I'm sure we all want to do whatever we can to restore services. So the sooner you can come back to this committee with recommendations that we can help you with, I'm sure we all will be very happy to do that.
Hi, Jaime De La Vega, DOT. Councilman, to add to that response, to the extent that the council has certain policy priorities or changes you want to see, if it does not conflict with federal or state law, we will help you change the municipal code or ad code to advance your priorities. So we'll bring those to you incrementally, like we did with apron parking, like we did with parking exceptions. So we'll be doing that on an ongoing basis with you based on direction from the committee and the council.
Great, much appreciated.
And one other thing, Jaime, that you hear, they survey streets a lot, and then it's sometimes months before you get the lanes down. We've lost several lawsuits of people when lanes aren't marked. Can you look at that to try to get a better time between Surrey and painting the street? Because is that funded?
No, that is funded. We are actually in the process of streamlining that process.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's actually interesting you say that, because I actually came close to a meeting with another car not long ago in my neighborhood, which has had a great job of slurry sealing done all over the neighborhood, and we're getting lots of good comments. But it does take a while to get the lines. So for a while, it's a little more dangerous for people that aren't paying attention. So
And you don't want to give Rick Orloff any ideas. Do a story on which council member has the best street. You got a better street than mine, Paul. Mine's the 1925 street.
Oh, actually, mine is the one street in my neighborhood that needs a lot of work.
Good. Keep it that way until your last month in office.
There you go.
Do I recommend approval, or whatever the word is, of move?
There's no further comments. We'll move approval without objection. And thank you for your testimony on this and your good work. Item number 7.
Can I ask that be continued so we can have a robust discussion at this late hour? 7 is on the highway system in the East San Fernando Valley. Does that offend staff? I'm sorry if we kept you here all this time, but I just want to look at how we could articulate that. Is that okay, Mr. Chair? We continue that?
No problem. There is one speaker from the public. If you want to speak now, that is fine. Barry Johnson.
Barry Johnson, Studio City Neighborhood Council Transportation Committee member. We just saw this on your agenda. We haven't formulated any kind of community impact statement yet, but from the past when this issue was raised, we were very concerned. This interchange of the 101, 134, 170 is a very quiet interchange, relatively speaking. It's not highly elevated up in the air, and it's surrounded by Studio City, Valley Village, Midtown North Hollywood, and West Toluca Lake, with primarily single-family homes that are about 75 years old and have been there longer than the freeway has been there. And we're very concerned about getting elevated 10-story high transition lanes up in the air that you see like down at the 110, 105. So just a heads up that we are very concerned about this issue.
I'll work with you, Barry.
Okay.
Thank you.
It's like we don't want to say absolutely no, we just still want to get it the right way.
I'm trying to get neighborhood traffic off your streets. They're leaving the freeway to cut through your neighborhood.
Right, and I no longer represent some of those areas, but I don't lack concern for them either. So, obviously, we'll ask that we take a close look at that as this process moves forward. And also, when this item comes back to committee, I want to be sure we have a little more to say about exactly how it would be funded, who funds what, how much it will cost, et cetera, et cetera. All right, item number 8.
Item number 8 is the Labange-Kretz resolution prohibiting the parking of vehicles that are in excess of 22 feet in length or over 84 inches in height during the hours of 9 a.m. through 3 p.m. on both sides of Wilshire Boulevard between Fairfax and La Brea Avenues.
And do we have a staff report on this?
Good afternoon, Roy Kim with Department of Transportation District Operations. I don't know if we have a report on this, but basically, should you decide to move forward, we are ready to comply with it. But however, I should note that there have been some concerns raised about whether we have a necessary authority to establish these overheight zones in the mid-block locations that are 100 feet or more from the intersection, without having additional evidence of reasons to why that we need it. So our recommendation at this point is to start with restrictions at the first 100 feet from the intersection at all these locations. Good thing about this is that most of the blocks on Wilshire Boulevard in this stretch is very short. So if we were to establish overheight zones within 100 feet of intersection, I think it will address most of your concerns. And we'll need to work with you, your office, and maybe perhaps City Attorney's office to come up with those locations that don't fall within the first 100 feet of the intersection to come up with additional reasons.
So, Bonds, do you have?
No, I'm following the suggestion of the City Attorney and the Department of Transportation on this, and look forward to work with the community on this. Thank you very much.
So do we move it as is?
Move it as is.
Public comment?
Yeah.
Your comment?
I haven't moved it yet. We do have one speaker from the public, Leah Ross.
No.
I have a question and a statement. Which one would you like first?
Well, we may not answer it, but I'll give you time to do both.
Okay. Well, here's what I see.
And you have 2 minutes.
Here's what I see with this resolution. Number one, I'd like to ask to postpone the action until all interested parties can weigh in. I'm the only one who can be here today that represents the food truck community. And I feel like such a wide-sweeping action is not really the right way to deal with such a complex issue. I think because of these height and length restrictions, it affects all trucks in this huge stretch of street, and that means FedEx, that means UPS, any delivery vehicle, any moving vehicle, and I'm sure that the building management teams and their clients would not be happy with this type of thing because it will affect their service. And I'm sure UPS, FedEx, all these other companies aren't going to be happy with it. And my question is, what is the purpose of this? Because I'm assuming it is to help regulate food trucks in the area. And until we have time to really look at each block, see where 100 feet goes, what space that leaves, we don't know how it affects the commerce of any type of vehicle that falls underneath that length and height restriction. So I really feel like it should be something that we should wait to move on if possible. I would ask that we can have more discussion on it and more input.
As a legal point of clarification, under 22507 of the California Vehicle Code, the department's recommendation that we prohibit oversized vehicles that are 22 feet in length or 6 or more feet in height is written directly into the law. We don't have to make findings regarding that particular aspect of it because but the state has already determined that it's a safety issue. The other things if we wanted to do it as written currently, the motion probably would require some findings that it's necessary for public safety in those other areas.
It's absolutely necessary for public safety and the large vehicles there that mass the area, but I'll be happy to walk with you and anyone else on the block, and you, Jay, and ask for the department's help, because I wanted a pilot program, Mr. Chair, but they didn't have a pilot program, and this is what I was left this, and this is long overdue based on discussions that we've had. So I look forward, if I could give you my number and you can give me yours, we'll walk it and see what works for everybody.
I would like to do that if we can. I would walk it with you. I'd like to see
Sure.
what spaces it would affect.
Very well.
And Mr. Labange, does your original motion anticipate this change of limiting it to 100 feet from the intersection, or do we need to amend it?
I want the largest flexibility that we have, whether it's 100 feet or whether it's determined. There's a lot of pedestrian crossing that's there near the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, et cetera. So I would want the widest parameters there. There's an area west of Stanley which doesn't have any crossing, which probably would not have restrictions at this time.
Councilmember
Yes.
Labange, under the law, they can put up the signs right now regarding the 100 feet, and in the interim, while that's being done, you can also conduct your...
Well, I would want to work with the community as I have in the past. We just wanted to get this approved so we could move forward and have some resolution. I did hope there was a pilot program, and I'm sorry Mr. De La Vega is not here, but I don't believe the Department of Transportation or the Planning Department has ever looked at this particular issue of this change in use of large vehicles amassing in areas. That being said, this is the option that I have available as I worked with your department and your suggestion to move forward with this. So before the signs go up, we're going to certainly, before they go up, we're going to certainly walk the block with you.
But are you saying that there would be an amendment to what's right
No, I think what's
here,
going to be there is
or-
a change, a real change from the massing. The oversized vehicles that are there that come over, the meters. I don't even know, how many parking tickets are given out there, Jay?
I'm not aware of those numbers.
Okay, sorry. I mean, how many, what kind of problems are there? All these factors that go into it. So there's got to be, it's an unusual situation that shows a cluster of mass, and I'm trying to be able to spread it out a little. I did ask very clearly to the department, maybe they didn't understand me, that you look at the side streets and create a zone on the far side of a signal light so it doesn't block the tri-light. These large vehicles do block the tri-light and does have the potential for accidents, but you couldn't figure that out. You could figure other things out, but you can't figure that out. But if you figure that out, then we could look at that. But I think on the massing on Wilshire, with the large number of buses that go down there, I'm very concerned about this. And I've waited a long time in trying to work something out, and this is an option that we have to work out.
So you're moving the item as originally written?
As is, unless the city attorney tells me I should do something else, or Lisa Schechter.
Well, you're moving it as is. The full council will consider the action. Nothing, I've already advised that the department's recommendation is probably...
You said I could do something even without this now, but then the department had told me I had to have this. So I'm a little confused myself. I just want a tool in the toolbox to be able to adjust the large massing of overheight vehicles that are extended over the parking zones that gather on certain parts of a very busy bus street with heavy pedestrian flow.
So does it seem that under the current law, without passing this resolution, you can put up those signs, we can continue the discussion, and then possibly...
Now, we're going to go full force with this here, with anything that you have, because I'm looking for you as Department of Transportation officials to tell me what can be done. I'm real concerned about safety and massing. I'm concerned about vehicles parking all day long there, and your officers having to engage. I had a nice conversation with one of the officers today, and some of the problems that they have with the hostilities they get from giving tickets out continually to people, and the challenges go on there. So I need some regulation from you. But we're interested in this, so I'd ask for an aye vote as we move forward. But do I need to add anything, Mr. City Attorney?
Well, I think it would be advisable to have a public hearing, not the way we've done it today.
No, we don't need a public hearing. We need to go out and walk the block, and the councilman needs to handle it. I've asked for this help from our department, and I haven't got anywhere. I'm very disappointed. Now we have this, is what I recommend, and we finally got it in committee.
Mr. City Attorney, what's your recommendation?
I would advise that the department, one is, as they have explained, can now put up signs without actually even needing council to direct that if they within 100 feet of every intersection. Then I would advise that a public hearing be held. They can.
Why would a public hearing be held? What's required of that, Mr. City Attorney? Why is that required?
Similar to our for sale sign ordinance, where we had people come in.
You know, I'm very disappointed because I've fought a long time for this, and to come to this point and hear that, it's very disappointing. This is a situation that as a council member, I've tried to resolve, and I've tried to resolve it, and I'm happy to walk out with you and others. Okay, I just wanted to get to this point so we can move forward. I think there will be some changes on Wilshire, but there won't be total displacement. You know, to have another meeting, people are not going to be happy. People are not happy now. I want to make sure it's a safer area. And I need help, okay? I need help. So I don't know if I have a requirement for another public hearing. Where would you have the committee would have the public hearing? I could have a public hearing, I'll walk out the street. And then if you're unhappy, you could come back to this committee and say that you're unhappy.
It would just be advisable to establish, you've said that there's a public safety hazard. I don't dispute that. I don't think anybody would dispute that. What we're trying to do is make sure that we have a hearing where people come in. I know you don't, this may not be what you want to hear, but do it the same way that we did with the for sale signs, where we bring in photographs, videotape, and testimony from people out there, and DOT determines how many tickets we've given out and the other safety issues, and to bring it in and have a report.
But did you make this requirement for the other overheight vehicle areas in the city?
Yes, we did. We did
You
it
did?
for Councilmember Koretz's district when we put the signs.
Where was the hearing held?
It was held right here in T Committee, and he had his.
But that was a suggestion, not a requirement.
No, we wanted it to do it as a requirement because if the matter goes into litigation, then we have a record that a court can find is supported.
Now, what's the difference between, quote, a public hearing and what we're doing here today where we noticed
This is a public
that...
hearing right now, but I would advise that we would like to take testimony or have video and pictures. It would just be...
I got a lot of pictures. You know, I'll show you the pictures, Exhibit A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. I want to walk with you. I want to walk with you.
Let's put those pictures on the record. Then.
You know?
Put everything on record.
Yeah, so that you have it right there. Just so you have here, Exhibit A, mass, okay? Tri-light blocked. Notice high red light over the last vehicle, unsafe. Exhibit B, pedestrians walking from behind high light vehicles. Exhibit C, in the red zone near a fire hydrant. Exhibit D, height of a person's head in near the top of the flap for the catering truck. Exhibit E, extending into the next zone. Massing, et cetera, et cetera. Do you want me to call all these out? A, B, C, D, E?
Absolutely. Please do.
These are duplicates of those. There's enough there. These are duplicates.
Okay.
So that's it, but I would very much like to walk with you.
Yeah, I would like that as well. It seems to me that the solution that is already in front of us can be done without a motion going forward that doesn't specifically address what the issue is and can be discussed further and readdressed as is or changed to something that will be more likely to be put into place and not disputed.
I understand that, but what we may do is we will find time next week.
And Mr. LeBlanc, I'm going to close the public hearing at this time.
Okay. And I want to just tell to the department, if you're available next week, you're available on the weekdays?
I did have a question for the speaker.
Okay.
What do you propose about doing, one of the problems that I have personally observed on Wilshire Boulevard is the scout cars that come there first park there all morning, and then the food trucks come. One of your other people, Matt, I can't think of his last name. Yeah, has admitted in here at a previous hearing that that is occurring, and that is a huge problem because then there isn't turnover for the meters, which gives the council a legitimate reason to ban these trucks on Wilshire Boulevard at those locations.
Well, I think that this restriction, although it would prevent food trucks from being anywhere on the street, also, as I said, prohibits any truck from being on the street. It just doesn't seem like the right solution. I think, the start is to address safety with making it so that no trucks can park within that 100-foot, space. And if after that happens, we're looking at a smaller space, I think we need to address specifically what the issue is in that smaller space, whether it be people that are parking, past the time, or if it's, not legal, all those issues.
We'll see that on the walk, and many of the side streets, I'm very familiar with, do have loading zones. And they did a study, UPS, make right turns, no left turns, so they do right turns.
Mr. Labange, I'm going to ask for a vote on your motion. That will pass without objection.
Thank you very much, and I look forward to getting your number right now so we can walk out there. Thank you.
Item number 9.
Item number 9 is the Labange-Garcetti motion instructing DOT to report on the feasibility of implementing bicycle stairs on outdoor city stairwells.
How are we doing? Give me a one-minute report on that.
I'm not sure.
You're okay. Do you need these marked A, B, C, and D?
I'll take them.
You want them marked?
If we could have a staff report on this item?
Can I make a quick report? Sure.
Yeah.
Tim Framo, DOT. The motion is fairly general as far as stairways throughout the city, but we have installed one of these such locations under Pacific Coast Highway. We have some photos. The one location we looked at with Mr. Labange was at Waverly and Riverside. We did determine that it would be feasible to install a bicycle rail at that location. We're currently working with Bureau of Street Services, transfer funds over to them to have them install it.
Okay, that's good. I'm sorry this committee's been so long, because we could have installed in the last 2 hours.
Anyone else that would like to comment on that?
My name is Paul Mishkin with the Department of Transportation Bikeways Office. We have provided the funding for the work. We are in the process of transferring the funds to BSS for the design and implementation of the ramps on the stairs. As soon as the transfer should happen within a month or so.
Ferdy's the man.
I have one question that concerns me a little bit on these ramps. Any concern that they might be used to engage in the practice of bombing and just be a really great, dangerous skateboard ramp?
We do have some pictures of it. It's right close next to the wall of the stairs, so there is no room for someone to stand on it or to skate down on it.
Thank you. Well, that's my one fear. That's my one fear.
Pretty. Right there. See, it's right on the side where the red is. It's not something they can slide down on.
Well, it's not impossible, but hopefully not.
I didn't fix you to be a skateboarder, Paul.
I'm not a skateboarder. I'm someone that's concerned about people killing themselves, as they sometimes do in these situations. I'm not sure I'd view this as the highest priority compared to making stairs ADA accessible, etc. But that being said, I'm assuming this will pass without objection. Mr. Labange?
Yes.
This motion passes without objection. I assume you do not object. And one last item, your motion on number 10.
Item number 10 is a Labange Garcetti motion requesting Caltrans District 7 representative to report on the collaboration needed between the city and the state to maintain the highway system and report on all current and future projects that are scheduled within District 7.
Is there any staff to speak to this?
Good afternoon, Michael Hunt, LADOT. This appears to be a Caltrans issue, but we will be more than happy to contact Caltrans to see if we can get a listing of their current and future projects in the District 7.
Yeah, what I wanted here, Paul, is to get the district director over here and go over it. Both of the ambition of the city when the Caltrans building was built and DOT moved in there is to work hand in hand and shoulder to shoulder. And there's a lot of things that they do together. We should know about it and know what's planned.
Absolutely.
So that's it.
Okay.
We'll get him in his schedule when he's available.
We have one member of the public to speak on this item, and then we'll move the item. Mr. Barry Johnson.
Barry Johnson, Studio City resident. I would just hope that this collaboration between the city and state for maintenance would include weed abatement along our freeways. I'm literally ashamed to have guests visiting here and drive down the freeways and see nothing but weeds on both sides. And in the 70s and 80s, there were no weeds there. And I'm not sure if it's because of Prop 65 and we don't use weed killer anymore, but our freeways are the worst looking in the nation in terms of weeds. And you go to like Phoenix, you don't see a weed along the highway. Here, it's like the weeds have overtaken what was there. So I think we can do a better job on weed abatement. Thank you.
I certainly agree with you, and sadly, this is also a problem on some of our own city streets because we don't have the money to send people out to cut them down, particularly on concrete median islands. I think that simple change, if we were able to get it to happen on the freeways working with Caltrans, would make a huge difference in the aesthetics of the city. So there being no one left here but myself, I will move this forward as a recommendation of the chair. And there being no other items, we are adjourned.
Oh, yeah, thank you.